All right, let's go. Kansas City Chiefs 17, Jacksonville Jaguars 9. Not the shootout type of game that we were expecting here, but the Chiefs pull it out. They move to 1-1. Jags fall to 1-1. I think the story of the game here for me, well, first off, Travis Kelce comes back, finds the end zone. So he comes back from his injury, 4 catches for 26 yards on 9 targets. And Patrick Mahomes looks pretty solid again, does turn it over with an interception, dropped interception in there early as well. But the story for me is the Jaguars in the red zone could not score in the red zone, could not put the ball in the end zone in the red zone, couldn't score touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence had a lot of near misses, Sam, a lot of pass gets there, 1 foot in, really tight window throws. I think the Chiefs defense deserves a ton of credit, but this one, 2 things, right? It was the game where the Chiefs just decide they're going to turn it over in every which way they can. Much like Thursday night, much like last year's regular season game against Jacksonville. And the Jags unable to capitalize because they just could not put the ball in the end zone with all those opportunities.
Yeah, including right at the death. I mean, they, ball right at the back of the end zone to Calvin Ridley, whose day seemed to be like all of those plays. Calvin Ridley had something like 7 targets, 2 catches. But like almost all of the incompletions were like razor thin, almost got it, almost had it, almost got the foot down, almost didn't step out of bounds. Like the whole game was like that, and that kind of ended up being the difference. Yeah, so Travis Kelce came back, but I thought clearly did not really look like Travis Kelce yet. He had 9 targets, 4 catches for 26 yards, one of which was the touchdown. But there were sort of few things. Number one, I don't think he just looked himself, but even just statistically, you could see 1 yard per route run. He's usually 2 or 3 times that. All 5 of his targets were contested catches, and he only caught 1 of them. The fact that 5 of them were contested tells you that he wasn't really himself, because that doesn't typically happen to Travis Kelce. But the important part was the touchdown that he scored was why they need him on the field even if he's not 100%.
Yeah.
Like that's the telepathic connection that he has with Mahomes to find the space and be on the same page in finding the space when things start to break down is why he's so important. It's like even if he can't move, it's important having him out there because he understands where Mahomes wants to go with the ball when the play's gone to hell and he's moving and the space is, it's a fluid picture that's changing constantly. Like Kelce knows where that's supposed to be. Nobody else they have does. Like every other receiver on the field, Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Noah Gray, Kadarius Toney, none of them have that feel that Kelce does. Not just where the space is going to be, but also like where Mahomes wants to go with it. Like those are 2 slightly different questions. And Kelce gets both parts of it. And that, honestly, it's the difference in this game. It literally is that score and Kelce's understanding with Mahomes. So, Kelce will get better. He'll get more healthy. We'll get, I'm sure, him back to full strength. But if he's simply out there, it makes a difference to this team.
To be fair to Sky Moore, he did find the open grass for a 54-yarder that pretty much sealed the deal for Kansas City when they were trying to run the clock in their 4-minute drill. They had a big 3rd and long. Mahomes does what he does and extends the play, finds Sky Moore for the 54-yarder. Really outside of that play, it was another just so-so performance, I think, by the Kansas City offense. They had barely run the ball in the first half. I think their running backs had 1 or 2 carries. They did start the second half running the ball a little bit. You were reminded that Isaiah Pacheco is, just a hard-nosed runner, imposing, just punishment on the defense. Pacheco running hard, had a 31-yarder in there, but he averaged almost 6 yards a carry. And I know I say this every year, but I'm not saying the Chiefs need balance or any of that, but getting Isaiah Pacheco X number of carries just to have a different body type to tackle, just to say, look, now you're going to have to, face a power player, basically, because we're hitting you with a whole bunch of finesse. We're hitting you with a whole bunch of, horizontal pass game and underneath pass game. And we're making you tackle in space. But at some point, you're going to have to get physical against the Chiefs. And Pacheco adds that element to it. So I always like that balance, that on any given play, you've got a battering ram type of running back like Pacheco. but also you have to, face the finesse type of passing attack that Kansas City's bringing to the table. So I thought that was interesting. Trevor Lawrence, man, the stat line is not great. 22 of 41 for 216, 68 passer rating. We have him. There are 4 passes in there that are pretty much tight window, really well thrown, that fell incomplete. So you're not going to see that big of a difference. To me, this was really the difference in the game, right? A lot of these were in the red zone, the passes we've already talked about, but he was hitting some tight window throws. And Zay Jones back of the end zone, Calvin Ridley on 4th down that you mentioned, just not getting the benefit of those plays. The Jags need to make those plays, man, especially if they're trying to knock off the best team in the AFC.
Yeah, so you're right. Any one of those literally changes the outcome of the game potentially. But I think because the Chiefs receivers were still kind of letting them down a little bit, catch fumble type of play, I think that part evened it out, but the difference was, like, Kansas City got 2 of their 3 best players back on the field in this game. They got Travis Kelce and they got Chris Jones. We already talked about what Kelce brings to the table and what he added to this team. The other side of that is Chris Jones showed up. I mean, he was one of their best players on defense, period. But like all, genuinely great defenders, he also showed up, like, in the right moments. I mean, Chris Jones got a sack on a 4th down at midfield at one point in the game. Just perfect timing, big play, ends the drive. He also got, I think it was a hit, not a sack, but like 3rd and long.
The 3rd down.
Yeah.
It was exactly what I predicted on the preview show, Sam. Remember, I said, hey, he'll line up out wide against right tackle rookie Anton Harrison. Right. Keep an eye on the matchup. Pull up the audio. Just go get the audio, someone. But he gets the quick win against the rookie in crunch time. Sorry to steal your thunder, but I needed to make that point that I predicted one thing right.
No, absolutely. Take your victory lap. So, 3rd and long. 4th and 4 and 3rd and long are two of his most important plays in the game, 2 of his biggest wins in the game. That changes the outcome of the game. I mean, that's 2 drives that got stopped because Chris Jones took over, the same way we've seen, in key games in the playoffs in the past. So 2 of their best 3 players, with the other one being Mahomes, who's just at this level of, absurd at all times, seemingly, came into this game and made discernible, tangible differences to the outcome. Like, that, honestly, was the biggest story, is that for as much as we can talk about how good Kansas City's roster is top to bottom, I mean, this is a great case study of how 2 guys can change the outcome of the game.
The Chiefs' offensive line, I want to talk about Juwan Taylor. There's a request in the chat to discuss Juwan Taylor. 5 penalties yesterday. But the Chiefs' offensive line, from a pass pro standpoint, outstanding once again, much like they were in the playoff game when Mahomes had one leg. Jags pass rush, man, I've said this throughout the offseason. If Josh Allen isn't having a 6 or 7 pressure day, I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what's happening. And Allen's not the type of guy where he's really, really consistent week to week. He does have 6 and 7 pressure games, and then he has your 2 pressure game. There's nothing from Trayvon Walker still. There's just not enough from a Jags perspective, especially against this one of the better pass protecting offensive lines in the league. I don't know how much we've actually discussed the whole tackle jumping. It looks like the tackle false start deal. I mean, I don't want to spend an hour on it because the O-line people love discussing this, but a week after Juwan Taylor, looks like he's false starting and everyone's pulling it out. I mean, he's really just moving right at the snap, but it's harder to do on the road. And, he's picking up all sorts of penalties here in this game, but those aren't really false starts, Sam. When in this game they were, but generally they're moving right at the ball. It looks like the right tackle or the left tackle's leaving early. Just an interesting thing that a lot of tackles are doing around the league.
Yeah. So number one, it's not just Juwan Taylor. Number two, there's 3 separate elements to sort of how he is pushing the boundaries. And the third part of this is, by the way, the NFL basically came out and said, we're going to pay attention to this week. Like, what happened on opening night was a farce. Like, it was clearly the lines have been the envelope has been pushed too far, and we're actually going to push back at this because it is ridiculous. Now, all the offensive line guys, Duke and all those guys have been pushing back, saying this has been happening for years, and it's not, this is just where we are. Like, yeah, but at some point we go too far, and we actually do need to correct, right? Like, it's like the re-emphasis of the rules that happens every now and again. It's, yeah, you can push the boundary and push the boundary and push the boundary and take an inch and an inch and an inch, and at some point you go, hang on, like look where we started and look where we are now. We need to go back. We need to make a change. That's what the officials have done off the back of opening night. And had that game not been, an island game, everybody's watching, probably wouldn't have happened. But that's the reality of how the world works, is when you're exposed to the sunlight on the biggest stage, that's when you get a reaction. So there's 3 different ways he's taking the piss, frankly. Number 1, stance. Like, he's so far off the line of scrimmage. His helmet theoretically is supposed to intersect with the waistline, like the belt line of the center. And it doesn't have to, like, just the Venn diagram. They just need to cross over slightly. So he can be quite a long way back from the line of scrimmage and still be good. He, having said that, on opening night, was clearly too far back almost all the time. Number 2, he is one of these guys, Lane Johnson is another, and I'm sure there's a few of the other ones out there as well, who sort of do this thing where they're constantly resetting, like, their back foot before the snap, like getting it comfortable, almost like a sort of twitch mechanism so that they're ready to spring back off the line as soon as the snap comes. So whereas a lot of other positions, you got to get into your stance and then not move for a period of time before the snap, officials are kind of giving these guys that leeway to mess with that back foot almost right up until the snap. And then the third point is he actually setting off before the ball is snapped? And on most occasions, he actually isn't. He's just timing it perfectly. But you add those 3 things together and it looks really bad. It's the fact that the other 2 are coming into play along with the perfect timing of the snap. But there was also a play or 2 here or there where he was jumping early in addition to those other 3 things, right? So one of the things off the back of this is, he had a ton of penalties. I think only one of them was false start, though. Like, it was the fact that I think he sort of was prepared for the backlash and maybe messed with his set up a little bit, but overall I think it was just a thing that offensive linemen have been collectively pushing the boundaries of for a while. The officials are apparently trying to crack down on it, and it's probably a good thing.